Beyond the mist and heather grey, where mortal footsteps seldom stray, there stands a hall of ancient stone, where secrets sleep and truth is known. The lost lore library, they say, guards wisdom from the light of day. Oh, Jack the keeper, wise and old, with silver tongue and heart of gold, he tends the books of days gone by, beneath the ever-watchful sky, and knights and Talbots green and white protect the halls both day and night. The shelves stretch high to vaulted beams, where candlelight on leather gleams, and manuscripts in languages dead tell tales that common folk ne'er read. But Jack, he knows each volume well, and which are safe and which to quell. Oh, Jack the keeper, wise and old, with silver tongue and heart of gold, he tends the books of days gone by, beneath the ever-watchful sky, and knights in tabards green and white protect the halls both day and night. Some say he's lived 1,000 years, some say he's conquered all his fears, some say he was a king dethroned who chose this quiet life alone. But none can say for certain true what Jack has seen or Jack has done through. If you should find the hidden door and cross the threshold to the floor of polished oak and Persian rock, speak soft and low, be not a thug, for Jack will test your heart's intent before you see where knowledge went. Oh, Jack the keeper, wise and old, with silver tongue and heart of gold, he tends the books of days gone by, beneath the ever-watchful sky, and knights in tabards green and white protect the lost lore library's light. The lost lore library stands still beyond the moorland and the hill, where Jack keeps watch forevermore. Oh, wisdom's vast and sacred store. Beyond the mist and heather grey, where mortal footsteps seldom stray, there stands a hall of ancient stone, where secrets sleep and truth is known. The lost lore library, they say, guards wisdom from the light of day. Oh, Jack the keeper, wise and old.
Well. Hello. Oh, bloody hell. Look at that. My hair is still wet as I got home. I showered. And I thought, you know what? I can stream tonight. I can stream. We can have a stream. We can do great things together, you and I. Welcome, one and all, to the Lost Law Library. It's lovely to see you. Um, and I think we might have a couple of new people joining us as we go along. I don't expect this to do numbers, simply because I am a Brit streaming in Britain at 6 p.m. and the Americans are yet to be in a position on a Friday to tune in, I suppose. And for whatever reason, I get very little in the way of English viewership, and I think that's because I disturb my fellow Englishmen. They see me as a sort of superior being. I'm kidding, of course. I'm not that far up my own backside just yet. A couple 100,000 more subscribers than I might be. Stug, Warlock, welcome indeed. I got into a bit of a Twitter spat today, and now I want to talk about the Lord of the Rings. How long I will talk about the Lord of the Rings for, I don't know. I've been partaking or indulging myself, shall we say, in the Silmarillion on Audible over the last few days, which is quite good timing because this has then come up, and it means I can have a good go at just ranting about the lore for a bit, as any good nerd should. I came across a bit of a meme. Well, it's not really a meme, and it wasn't even the original artist that I was having a go at so much. One of the problems being that the original poster, hey, Jeffrem, the original poster of the cartoon wasn't the artist. It was a Lord of the Rings slop account that has since deleted that post. I'm not sure why. They had more likes than I did. It wasn't as if I'd ratioed them or anything like that. By the way, how's the audio? The soundboard's telling me it's a little bit quiet, but you guys will have to be the judge of it. Anyway, I will get the thing that set me off up on screen nice and quickly so that we can keep the attention spans of everyone around. Here it is. This is the image. This is the image that I foretold. What is my brain doing? This is the image that I beheld and that so annoyed me and so put me and so put me down in the dumps. Can I get a little bit of a better screen here? Restream, maybe a little one. Oh, look, I can do this. No, not like that. There we go. That's better. This image here, it's Aragorn, obviously the Lord of the Rings Aragorn. By the way, Viggo Mortensen was a fantastic Aragorn. I think he was great for the role. I have no idea how to run a country. Bleep. And I just sort of sat there in my office at my break for a bit, looking at this post. And I had to wonder what people thought Aragorn was. Aragorn himself is the chieftain of the Dunedain, has been in that role at this point for several decades. I think more than half a century. You have to remember this man is 87 by the time all this happened. Maybe 88? I'd have to remind myself. This Aragorn is well acquainted with being a ruler, a chieftain, a monarch of a sort, or a monarch in waiting, or a rightful monarch to a land with loyal followers and subjects. And then I thought a little bit more, and then, well, wasn't he also raised by the greatest statesman of his age? Elrond half elven. Oh, thank you, my love. I have been gifted with bagel. Thank you, my dear. He didn't know who he was until 20, then immediately sees Arwen and goes on his event. You're right, but again, something the books and the films differ on is that in the books he was gung ho for being king of Gondor, for following through on his right to rule as the heir of Isildur. And again, let's just bring it back though, because not only was Aragorn raised by Elrond Half-Elven, the greatest statesman of the Third Era. Elrond Half-Elven could have at any time decided to take up the kingship of the Noldor, should he decide to do so. It's to his credit that he didn't. I think that is sort of what enabled the Noldor to begin returning via the Grey Havens, because he put down the kingship of the Noldor, which Feanor had taken up and caused so many issues with. Either way, there is a massive lineage for him, basically being groomed to rule by the finest, finest mind available in Arda at that time, or available on Middle Earth at that time for the job. And of course, Elrond himself said, I withheld the scepter from you until you have proven your right to rule," or some such, if I'm remembering the line correctly. Um, man, you have rather complex views on the matter, Stug. I don't really. I don't think so. I think that Aragorn was the perfect man for the job because he was written to be the perfect man for the job. And there's an entirely different. We'll get into this. We'll get into this in a moment. I'm getting wound up already. I'm gonna have to take a little bite of this bagel because I've got home from work. I've not had dinner yet. I've showered, but it does mean that I am slightly irritable from hunger. So it's just mm, mm, that's really nice. Anywho, there's other stuff to this. This is simply what I found that set me off today, and I've been on this all day, all day. Let me go further back to what I said. Aragorn was educated by the greatest statesman of the Third Age. The books show him ruling justly and well directly after the defeat of Sauron. So, if we think about Aragorn being this destined king, we don't need a hangry Jack. No, you don't. Aragorn, as soon as Sauron is defeated, begins to rule. He begins. Yeah, someone did indeed challenge my knowledge, and I'm not all that knowledgeable. I just have I think, a little bit of a better understanding than maybe the person that originally drew this cartoon. By the way, the artist is probably fine. Like, they're probably a fine person. The art is kind of funny, but it rustled my jimmies. What was I saying? As soon as Sauron is defeated after the Battle of the Morannon, is it the Morannon outside the Black Gate? I think it is. Aragorn starts pronouncing judgments, like on is it Berethor? I want to say Berethor, the guard of the White Tower that first helped Pippin get into the role. He pronounces a judgment on him fairly and justly, and he goes through all of these people and starts pronouncing judgments and just decisions and ruling wisely, because it's Tolkien is incredibly clear in just the main text of the Lord of the Rings that Aragorn just fits into the role, just slips into the role so perfectly. In fact, Aragorn is so careful with approaching the kingship of Gondor that he is not wanting to enter the city of Minas Tirith until he has fulfilled something in the eyes of the people of Gondor. And it's only after he's forced into the houses of healing via circumstance that he then fulfills the prophecy that the hands of the king are at the hands of a healer. Oh, it's beautifully symmetrical writing on part of the professor, and is yet to be matched, and yet to see it's like again, and I probably never will, because Tolkien was a man unmatched even in his own time, I believe. But let's again go down my little list here a bit further. Number 3, you don't really run a country in this kind of setting. You rule a people. This is another thing that is a bugbear for me in different sorts of varying fantastical settings. When you're looking at your map of a fantasy world, you have borders, but they're kind of malleable. It's not like today where you've had the same borders the last 80 odd years. You don't really have a rule of an international rule of law. You've got relationships between rulers, marriage alliances, and the like, and this is what rules the day. Ah, well, thank you very much, Lord Stug. Not only are you the first member of the channel, $20 dues is very generous, and I'm going to leave what I'm saying whilst I get to what you're saying and have a bite of my bagel. Mm. Mm. It's a really nice bagel. I like, but I'm a simple man. I have simple pleasures. Stug says, my disagreement is mostly that people think Aragorn in the books is more self assured than he is. I find he experiences much self doubt. It is very notable that he asked Gandalf to be an advisor after being crowned. You're not wrong. And I think we can actually tie that in to what I was saying about not wanting to go directly into the city. But you have to remember at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, he reveals the banner. He comes out with the Star of Elendil. He comes out with the sword of Elendil, Narsil reforged. And he is screaming Elendil's name as a battle cry, even throughout the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. This man knows his destiny. He is going through this as a destined thing. He knows where he's going in life. The thing with Aragorn is he is beset by the same human emotions that you and I would feel. However, what makes him heroic and virtuous is that those emotions, doubts, fears, all of it can be put aside, compartmentalized in a sense, and the deed is able to then be done. Aragorn is the archetype of the masculine hero, the one that sacrifices, the one that puts himself in harm's way, the one that, even when he himself is afraid, will go into the fray. Remember this: courage is not the absence of fear, but it is the ability to act regardless of fear. I also believe that, and I say this again, not only did he ask Gandalf to stay, and who wouldn't ask Gandalf to stay? Because, Aragorn is, in a sense, very humble in how he looks at his ability. Gandalf the White is an entirely different creature than Gandalf the Grey. Gandalf the White seems to have all of the faculties of his Maya um, uh, heritage, whereas Gandalf the Grey had memory loss and all and doubted and hung back, whereas Gandalf the White did. He rode forth and he was very quick and decisive. I think, therefore, it's also important to note that actually that Aragorn had other advisors. He had advice from Gimli the dwarf in construction. He had advice from many different elves, was raised by elves and had knowledge of their law. And his queen was Arwen the Evening Star. She was able to provide that advice. She was one of the last repositories left in Middle Earth of that people and was able to then continue giving elvish advice to humanity, even to her sons before she went off to die in Lothlorien. I mean, it's so beautifully written, and I do not disagree that Aragorn had fears. My point is that Aragorn knew who he was and pursued his destiny. Now, I understand why the movies. I can see Delver. Hello, Delver. Hello, Bill. I can see why the movies did to Aragorn what they did. It was a way of getting an arc into a much shorter period of time. Aragorn's arc is much more complicated and a little flatter in the books. However, it's more of a growth than an arc. Um, Aragorn is not the same at the end of the Return of the King as he is at the start of the Fellowship of the Ring. He's just not. There's a lot to do with this, but also again, there's another thing that this doesn't actually take into account, and that is that Aragorn himself traveled the world as a younger man. I say young man, he's still a Dunedain, he's still doing this as he's getting quite old. He went to Gondor and served in armies under Denethor. but under a false name, which I can't remember if someone wants to look it up for me. He went and he fought pirates. He fought the Corsairs of Umbar. I don't know if he actually went all the way to Umbar himself. I don't remember, but there is a port city on the southern side of Gondor that Aragorn did defend from the Corsairs of Umbar. And he did this as a Gondorian captain. He went in as a low-ranking soldier and was just so magnificent. He found himself being raised up quite rapidly. Savage Brewski, hello, sir. And there's Paladin Steve. That's a good point. Happy birthday, Bill, Mr. Dungeon Delver. You beautiful, beautiful man, you. I hope you're having a good one. But again, this is me and just simping for Aragorn for the king because he deserves more respect than this. Damn it. Another bagel bite. Oh, I'm dripping butter everywhere. Oh dear. Mm. You know, it's not terribly professional of me to eat while streaming, but you have to bear with me. I'm very hungry. And it's still going. That post is still getting an awful lot of views. I mean, looking at it now, it has, nearly 2,500 likes. It's got over 113,000 views. The algorithm has been ignoring me an awful lot lately. So it's nice to see that I'm back a little bit. Hey, it's the damnedest bastard. Welcome, sir. He did advise Ecthelion to attack it, as I recall. I think that's probably what I'm remembering, Stug. That is probably what I have in my mind there. Bill says Aragorn in the book was kingly, and he was kingly from the moment we meet him. He tells the hobbits, "I'm going to be king again." That's very true. And I think one of the most telling things is that he's obviously talked about his destiny, about his wants and desires with Bilbo quite a bit, who was residing in Rivendell at the time. And Bilbo creates the poem about him: "The crownless again shall be king. Not all that glitters is gold. Not all that wanders is lost. And deep roots are not reached by the frost." That is about Aragorn, and I think it's also a very cheeky reference to Nimloth, the white tree, the original white tree. I think the entirety of the problem surrounding people like George R.R. Martin's. By the way, I have a lot of respect for George R.R. Martin. I know people meme on him an awful lot, but he's done an awful lot more than me. Have a good lunch, Delver. But the problem that George R.R. Martin has, I think, with the Lord of the Rings is the Lord of the Rings isn't just a fantasy story. Sure, it is the basis of all modern fantasy, as Terry Pratchett said. It's like Mount Fuji, where you put it in the picture says a lot about it, and if you don't put it in the picture, that says a lot about it as well. You can't escape Tolkien in this genre. The problem is that it is supposed to be a mythology for the English people. It is a mythology of England, and this is a very English idea that the king is true and rightful and just. Not always perfect, but Aragorn is the idyllic king. He is supposed to be the ideal. And I think that in a world today filled with postmodernist BS, the idea of an ideal, of some platonic form of a king, is heretical, is blasphemous, and makes people very, very uncomfortable. Aragorn fulfills this platonic form, this ideal of a king, this perfect idea of a rightful ruler retaking their crown and ruling justly and wisely and with a happy people. We in the modern world don't really understand what that means because all of our politicians are self-serving evil bar stewards. It's not like that with the mythos of Tolkien's world. People loved their rulers. As I say, I've been indulging once more in the Silmarillion. At the beginning of the Silmarillion, as you're watching the Noldor be exiled from the West, you actually have them split out of whomst they love more, such as either Feanor or Fingolfin. And so you find that these peoples have a great love for their leaders. This isn't like modern politics. It's not supposed to be an allegory for modern politics either. It is supposed to appeal to the ideal relationship between ruler and subject. And that's something I think that that Martin gets very twisted, because he doesn't have this ideal. He thinks that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and no one would ever give it up. And Tolkien's message is entirely different, and that is that yes, power can corrupt, but the truly rightfully powerful, Aragorn has rightful power, are good. And it's this differentiation that I think really gets his goat. Savage Brewski says, yeah, we can't totally compare book to movie because of all the little differences. Book Elrond was okay with him marrying Arwen as long as he was king, etc. Yeah, and that's something that I really like, because, again, this is something that is very common throughout medieval English, Norman, Saxon merging poetry, in that the knights of King Arthur would often get the girl. Something the feminists often complain about is that women tend to be rewards for quests. Well, they're not entirely wrong. In this way, Arwen is sort of a reward for Aragorn completing his quest. But also, it is a value statement of Elrond's love for his daughter. Because what Elrond has said is, Arwen Evenstar shall not marry anyone less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. If that is the case, how much do you value your daughter, that no man may marry her if he is not at least the king of these two largest political boundary kingdoms on the map? You can't just be king of one, you've got to be king of both. And because the line of Isildur, the eldest son of Elendil, runs through Aragorn, I need to start reviewing bagels, do I? Well, I can tell you this one is okay. I don't really know much about bagels. They're my wife's sort of thing, but she made it for me because I was hungry. Bless her. Mm. Thank you for reminding me that I had a bagel. I was getting too into ranting for a bit there. Mm. Mm. This must be awkward to watch. Thank you, my love. I appreciate that. Oh, and another $5 dues from Lord Stug. Thank you, sir. By the way, if you have a mind for some deep lore convos on Lord of the Rings, see if you can land Girl Next Gondor or JRRTL. That guy has guests sometimes. Great channels. I might give it a go. If you want to comment on one of their videos, see if they want to come on, I'll be more than happy to have a conversation. But again, I want to say again, because I said at the beginning of this stream, we've got more people watching now. By the way, like and subscribe, and share the stream around. It helps me a lot. I myself don't consider myself to be an expert on Tolkien's lore at all. And I have had a few embarrassing situations in my life where I thought something was Tolkienian and it wasn't. So I am not going to claim a perfect knowledge of Tolkien, not at all. But what I will claim for myself is something of an understanding of intent, and perhaps temperament. This is because when I listen to interviews with him, or I read the appendices and I read his letters, you sort of get this idea of an English gentleman Catholic. And as an English Catholic myself, maybe not so much a gentleman, I kind of resonate with him on a few theological, philosophical, moral, spiritual levels, I believe. But again, I am by no means intelligent enough to be able to crack open and explain all of Tolkien. I simply like his stuff an awful lot, and I get too passionate about it, far too passionate about it, because it was my introduction to the genre that has shaped my life. For a long time, it was the only fantasy that I had, was The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Dabbling Warlock says, I have been afraid of turning out like my father. I've been unsure what I'm doing and where I'm going. To me, the movie Aragorn is a hero because he does overcome those fears and doubts, the same fears and doubts that I have. And that's wonderful. I understand. Again, The movies, the Peter Jackson movies are fantastic. I love them. However, no, not even a however. I love them, but I understand the reasoning as to why they changed Aragorn in the ways that they did for the films. There are more egregious things I think that the Peter Jackson films have done, and there are things that the Peter Jackson films have done which have stuck around in other media that I find a little irritating, such as the elves having to have these hiltless flowing swords when they should have more glamdring style swords with cross guards and the like. I think that the armor's pretty cool for the elves in those movies, but the swords don't make much sense to me. I also find that the idea that and I understand why they made the choice to put Arwen in Glorfindel's place when after Frodo was stabbed on Amon Hen. Amon Hen's the other one. What's the name for Weathertop? Amon Hen is the seeing seat, I think. I might be getting confused. Someone correct me in the comments. Um, but Arwen didn't have the light of Valinor at all, and so the wraiths shouldn't have been as scared of her as they were. Amunsul, thank you very much. Um, you can still have a curved sword with a hilt. Yes, dabbling warlock, you can, but they don't. uh, Super chat from Jeff from Denkar, $5 Canadian reduced. Thank you very much, sir. I do wonder how much of an influence his friend C.S. Lewis had on Tolkien and vice versa. Thoughts? I think there was there is an amount of influence that C.S. Lewis did have on Tolkien, and I think that was reinforcing his hatred of allegory. And of course, the main influence that Tolkien had on C.S. Lewis was converting him partially to the one true religion, Christianity, you know? And it was quite famous that after C.S. Lewis decided to be Anglican and not Catholic, that Tolkien was quite upset, which is quite funny to me. It's $5 Canadian dues. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate that. Hey, it's Alan. How you doing, mate? How's the missus? I haven't seen her around as much, but then again, I've been busy. She's taking a break. That's why I've not seen her around as much. The wife has informed me. Anyway, Arwen should not have replaced Glorfindel because she didn't have the light of Valinor. And Glorfindel deserved to be in that film. I think he has like 1 second of screen time at the end of The Return of the King. And he's not named. It's very silly. My boy Glorfindel got shafted. I like to think that Sting, Bilbo's sword Sting, was the dirk that Glorfindel killed the Balrog with. I like to think that. That's just headcanon. But also, I quite like the idea of Sting not being important until the Third Age, because that's also kind of fun. Another interesting thing to think about. This is I wanted to make a video on this for a while, but I just don't have time to sit down and make a long form piece of content. So I've been doing more streams than anything else. Is the interaction between Shelob and Samwise after Frodo is paralyzed by her. And you've got Sam standing over Frodo with, was it with Sting or with his barrow blade at that point? I'm not sure. And he says, "Come here and taste it." It's with Sting. I think he's got the light as well. And he's just, "Come here and taste it." And he's like, "Oh, that's a gardener, ladies and gentlemen." And to me, that is the Tommy in the trenches. That is the valor of the hobbits. Fierce as a dragon in a pinch. And you just don't get this stuff with anyone else. Tolkien just mastered it, and that was that. We shall not see its like again. We shall see echoes, perhaps. Da, da, da. It's a cool scene, but it's definitely part of Hollywood girl bossification. I'm not sure it would count as that. It's a bit too early. It's a bit too early for that. Todd, please do another deep dive on the Wayward Realms in the near future. This is an awesome discussion on Tolkien and becoming a fan. Well done. Thank you very much, Todd. I appreciate that greatly. There is actually a new Wayward Realms piece of content on the channel discussing dragons. I think it got a little bit crushed by the algorithm. So if you've not seen me talking to the creative director of the Wayward Realms, Victor, about the dragons that are in the Wayward Realms, it's one of the latest videos on the channel. It's only about a week old, maybe just over. If I take one more step, this will be the furthest away from home I've ever been. I ain't dropping no eaves, sir. Please don't turn me into anything unnatural. I love Samwise. I love Samwise a lot. Ah, have I run out of steam? I've only ranted for 35 minutes. This seems like a weak showing for me. Very nice. Stop giggling at me because I like the food you've given me.
That's right.
What now? I've ranted about Aragorn. I've ranted about politics. Mike, George R. R. Martin is such a boomer brain comedy. I literally can't imagine a world without taxes. Oh boy. Well, putting the political slant aside, because it's not really something I get into. You're not incredibly off base. We touched on this earlier on, but the problem with George R. R. Martin, I think, is he's a postmodernist. I think postmodernism has sort of crept its way into the main people that write the genre. I actually had the pleasure of meeting a lovely, lovely woman by the name of Robin Hobb, quite a big fantasy author. And this is over 10 years ago now, at the University of Birmingham, because my mother is a super fan and took her entire collection of Robin Hobb books for her to sign. And she spoke a little bit about her relationship with George R. R. Martin during the seminar. And I can't really remember what was said because it was so long ago. However, the philosophy that Sir Martin has, and I say Sir Martin out of respect because he's achieved more than me. I have been attempting to write my own little fantasy stories, my own little world for a long, long time. It's difficult to do, and he has produced excellent work in that it is obviously people enjoy reading it, even if it's not to my taste. But he is a postmodernist, and the reason that he cannot accept an ideal is because he himself tears those ideals down. And when you start, I've often described this as the fantasy tradition as a river running its course through human history. And as we are at the breakaway always of this river, if you attempt to subvert something too much, you just dam it up. And then those expectations of moving forward are thwarted, and you just end up frustrated. And I think that's what George R. R. Martin has found himself in the position of, where he is attempting to subvert the natural course of these stories that we've told for millennia and finding that his artificial barrier is preventing him from doing so. He's quite literally imposed writer's block on himself, and I don't envy him what he wants to do with his story, because it's obvious that what he wanted to do was what happened in the show, and everyone hated it. Rant about Denethor. In what respect should I rant about Denethor? No, sorry, you've been overruled. Jeff from Denkar, 5 Canadian dollary dues again. Thank you very much. Jeffram and Stug are funding my food shop this weekend. Thank you. How do you compare Tolkien with other authors of his time like Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft, and their contributions? I haven't read any Lovecraft, really, but I have read Howard, and I think they both rate highly, but Tolkien was the master. I mean, I often say that Tolkien and Howard are the grandfathers of the modern fantasy genre. Without them, you wouldn't have the genre. Yes, I'm aware of several earlier examples of such things, but for Tolkien and Howard, you have this amazingly quite similar idea of a prehistory for the world, and for both of these men having an excellent grasp of the English language. However, they have entirely different ideas as to what the story should be. Howard talks about can't remember the name. Is it Gore? Gar? The chieftain, the Pictish chieftain that swept, that took on uh, a priest from Aquilonia, and then used that knowledge to make a load of weapons, and then just conquered everything. And he was born in a mud hut and ended his life sitting on golden thrones and sipping out of cups made of gold handed to him by naked slave girls who were themselves the daughters of kings. You see, I can remember certain quotes, I just can't remember the name. And then you've got Tolkien, who is trying to provide not an account of brutal history, but of magnified mythology. He's trying to get across truths about the condition of his world to you, not necessarily, I don't think, the the uh the truth of fact by fact matter of statement. In fact, there's another thing there in that Tolkien, I think, would have been very adverse to naked slave girls in his stories and such things. Those sorts of things, even with the breeding of goblin men and men goblins and such like that, he skirts around what that would entail because they themselves reproduce after the manner of the children of Iluvatar. I myself have the idea of orcs being rather aggressive in that way, shall we say, and I have to skirt around it because if you ever wanted to get it published, you don't want to be too graphic with the detail if you're at least not a woman romantasy author. I've seen what's on those shelves. Denethor was done dirty by the movies. You're not wrong. I mean, I'm not trying to affirm your biases on this one. I think what people forget is that in the beginning of his life, Denethor was the most kingly regent. And he himself had such a force of will, himself being very much of Numenorian blood. He had such a force of will that he was able to contend with the will of Sauron through the Palantir. Now, he was indeed aided, I think, by the fact that he had the right to use the Palantir. And in Tolkien's world, the right to do something, the de jure of it, often trumps the de facto of it. Sauron did not have the right to use a Palantir, whereas the Steward of Gondor did. And I think that aided him in not being overwhelmed. You have to remember, Saruman, a Maiar, was overwhelmed, at least for a time, by the will of Sauron. A great effort had to be put forth by him. And even as his despair was taking hold, he was organizing the defenses of the city of Minas Tirith. There was a fortress in Pelennor, Care something or other, can't remember the name. Even that he didn't abandon, he kept it manned. He didn't want to give up Osgiliath without a fight, etc., etc. Yes, he had his flaws, and yes, of course, he died ignominiously. But he was in any other age against any other foe, Denethor would probably have been a hero. I think Caer Andros does make sense does sound familiar to me. The thing is, I think Tolkien liked Lovecraft as well because you have the deep things and there are things older and fouler than orcs and blah blah blah. And he, I believe, was aware of Howard and was from anecdotal evidence we can say that Tolkien liked Howard's work. But I don't think it's something that he himself could have produced. As I say, too much of a religious man, I think. I mean, even as I have started getting back in touch with my Catholicism, I found it more difficult to write some of these more erotic scenes that otherwise I find myself rather good at doing. I think the biggest issue is that Denethor's tragic flaw was pride, and the movies made him a sniveling coward. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure that his tragic flaw was pride. I think perhaps his tragic, was it a flaw? Was it a flaw? Because remember, the entire point of Denethor's character in my reading of Denethor is he is the tower weathered by time. whereas the storms that assail him is Sauron slowly chipping away at his force of will. I think his flaw was despair. I think his flaw was the giving up of hope. And because of Tolkien's very soft view of magic, one I share, by the way, I much prefer a soft sorcery to a hard magic system. I think that the weathering of his soul through the use of the Palantir and being assailed by Sauron mentally, that I think was Denethor's story. Proud, yes, but every reason to be so. I'm not sure it was a flaw. That's not to say you're wrong. Damnedest Bastard says Tolkien was the true heir to both Dunsanian and Northern European heroic epics. Howard was the epitome of libertarian adventure. Lovecraft was a master of cosmic horror. We knew not what we had until it was gone. Well, that's sad. I'm gonna have a bite of a bagel. Oh. Suddenly, I feel better. Yeah, there we go. Lord Sug agrees with me. He's affirming my biases. I think, again, there's something to be said about Denethor, though, is that he was far-seeing. And maybe you can say pride in those abilities or those talents kind of corrupt him a little bit. It's kind of like skilling, where in the full Assassin's Fall, Robin Hobb's books about Fitz. I can never remember the name of the series. The Farseer family that rules over the five duchies as one kingdom, they have an ability called skill, the skill. And it enables them to plant things in people's minds, to see over far differences, and to cause things to happen over far different distances. But what this skill does is it takes a lot of your self away from you. It makes you an addict, as if you were also on a drug. Life loses its luster. One big thing that comes up a lot is I'm not sure how much of this I can say on YouTube, is that the prince that is using the skill to defend his kingdom can only get pleasure from using the skill, and so is having trouble producing an heir to the kingdom, if you take my meaning. Howard is so distinctly American, where the conquests of prehistoric cultures were still in living memory. I'd like a bit of an explanation on that, Mike. I'm not sure what you mean. The conquest of prehistoric cultures was still right. Okay, I think I see what you're meaning. The Americans themselves had conquered quote unquote prehistoric cultures, Stone Age level technology cultures. I understand what you mean. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Regardless, the sheer amount of creatives that Lord of the Rings inspired is worth read and watch. Very true, Mr. Billy Hollywood. Very true indeed. I think it's a damn shame that you know what? No, it's not a damn shame that people aren't watching, because they still are. The Lord of the Rings is a yearly ritual for a lot of people. I'm constantly submerged in it in one way or another, where I'm jumping from one book to another, one passage to another, or I'm listening to the audiobooks at work. It's one of those timeless epics, something that we shall not see its like of again. Even though I should love to make one myself, I would never have the skill. I believe I do not have the temperament that Tolkien had. I do not have his faith. I do not have his experience in battle. I do not have his knowledge of the world before, and I definitely, most certainly, for all my verbosity, for all my flair of language, do not have his way with words or his knowledge of linguistics. He's a vitally yet poetic prose that is unique, is what's best in life. If you've not read any of the Conan stories, Dabbling Warlock, we are going to read some Conan at the Ink Guard level for the channel. Here's a plug for it. We're going to do some book clubs. I think the first story that we will read for every member at Inkguard and above, although Inkguard is the biggest at the moment, is probably The Frost Giant's Daughter. I find that story fascinating, and it's short enough that we can wet our feet on something and then get into something a little longer. Have you read Children of Hurin? You know the story more or less, having read the Silmarillion. It's definitely worth a deeper dive. I have not. It is on my list. I actually put it on my wish list today, or did I just look at it? I don't think I actually put it on the wish list. Either way, I was looking at it today. But it is one of those things that is on my list. I've got a list as long as my arm. A lot of it is just Appendix N. It was a couple years ago now that I actually went and read the Elric stuff. I wanted to get into more of the stuff that wasn't Tolkien, because I know how obsessive I am with my view of fantasy, and I wanted different views of fantasy. But now, a few years hence, I can see that all of fantasy is just Tolkien in one way or the other. Even Elric, and Elric is a character. Elric of Melniboné, for those not familiar, Elric is a character that is all over modern fantasy. The Witcher is derived from Michael Moorcock's Elric of Melniboné. The idea of the black sword it goes all the way back to Tyrfingr, and that's just Narsil and all the rest of it. So we have so much of Elric that is trying to be anti-Conan and anti-Lord of the Rings, where Conan is this Adonis, bronze-skinned, black-haired, blue-eyed hero, just muscular and beautiful to behold. And then you've got Tolkien, who's all about the fair elves and the nobility of the fair elf kind. And then you have Elric, the Melnibonéans, who are these evil fey creatures, very much the evil elf people of Moorcock's world. And then you have him being the opposite to Conan. He's this pale, wraith, albino, white-haired, sickly, needs drugs to live, or needs to feast on souls to live, red-eyed. So you Elric, even as a statement against Howard and Tolkien and being plastered all over fantasy in different forms without people realizing he's there, cannot get away from the fact that he descends directly from the tradition he was trying to subvert. And I think Moorcock back in the day would hate hearing that, but now probably would accept it in his older years, I think. I would be interested to hear his answer to that. Indeed, a yearly ritual. Yeah, see, even Jeffrem there. Jeffrem's doing it. He's doing the yearly Tolkien read. Right, I've been going for nearly an hour, and this was indeed a bit of an impromptu stream, which I'll clip up and chop up and things, and I'm deleting Bagel. Does anyone want to give me a super chat with a question? Something that you want me to talk about? Perhaps you want to click that membership button down below and get in on the book clubs and have more of this talk, but directly with me rather than through the medium of a stream and chat. I shall eat this bagel whilst you decide. Countdown clock's ticking. All right. I'm aware there's a bit of a delay between my stream software and YouTube, so I apologize for the dead air. But, you know, I'm hungry, so bagel. Well, it's still going. We are actually closing in on that 2,500 likes thing, which is funny. Very funny. Oh, you came in through Sandy Peterson, did you? He's actually been on the show before, Billy. I do a weekly stream called Talking in the Library, and he was on there talking about alignment last year. It's a little bit further down the stream page, but if you wanted to watch that, you're more than welcome to. And Dabbling Warlock became a member at the level of Inkguard. I've ensnared another. No, well, you're already in the Discord server, sir, so you know exactly where to be. I will actually go into Discord now and I will give you your new role. Welcome to the Ink Guard. Welcome indeed. And we will have to put a date down for this book club. I keep meaning to, and then life gets in the way, and the wife is very heavily pregnant, and I'm mostly thinking about that. But now that you haven't read any Conan yet, we will have to read some Conan for you. Dale Rippick's interpretation of Conan's mental state in TFGD, TFGD, TFGD. I feel like I should know what that stands for, but I'm drawing blanks. Oh, we have two coming straight away. I'll start with the most recent one. Jeff from Denkar, 5 Canadian dollar dues. Thank you very much, sir. I would like you to compare and contrast fantasy literature with sci-fi literature sometime in the near future episode of Talking in the Library. I can try. It's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. The only real sci-fi literature that I've read is a lot of Star Wars Expanded Universe stuff when I was a teenager. Ah, yeah, the Frost Giant's daughter. Yes. That's why I should know what that is, because I've already brought it up this stream. It's one of my favorite stories of his, too. I can give it a try, Jeffrem, but I'm not a big sci-fi guy. Sometimes I am. I have to be in the mood. And Lord Stug asks for 5 US dollar dues. Ooh, American currency. Where did the stone giants go? Bigger mystery than Entwives. You mean the stone giants that were throwing boulders around in The Hobbit in the Misty Mountains? Those guys. I think there's a good chance. I think I just whistled through my teeth there. That was weird. I'm getting old. I think there's a good chance that was metaphorical. But I think it might have just been an avalanche. But I can't be sure, because The Hobbit was one of those things that had to go through changes to sort of tie it back in with the growing mythos that he was developing at the time. So who knows? Who knows? As for the Entwives, unfortunately, that isn't a mystery. We know what happened to the Entwives. They were all killed by Sauron, I believe, in the Second Age. Very much a shame. Very much a shame indeed. Right, I think with those 2 super chats, we are coming to a close. So if you have not yet, please do like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member for all these book clubs, as Dabbling Warlock has just done. And maybe I'll do another impromptu stream at some point over the coming week. There might be a few more of these, because I've enjoyed ranting for a bit. Got to get the content out there while I can before the boy arrives. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the Entwives' fields, at least, were burnt by Sauron. I'm pretty sure they were, because when he launched his war against Eregion, the Entwives' fields would have been sort of in the way. So as he sort of spread up through the north and to the west, he went straight through the lands of Ithilien and Gondor and Rohan. And I'm pretty sure that's where the Entwives were and doing their field stuff. So I'm pretty sure he burned the Entwives, unfortunately. I don't think there are any left. I think some people sometimes assume or try and make maybe the old forest near Bywater and Bree and the Barrow Downs, near the Shire, I could have said, shouldn't I? That some people have maybe theorized the Entwives are there, but I think those are just Huons. I couldn't say otherwise. I think the Entwives are sadly gone. And Sauron is to blame, the prick. Yes, let the hate flow through you, brother. You see, that's something that's interesting. That's something that's interesting, is hate being, it's like a metaphysical thing that consumes a person in Tolkien's world. I do find that very fun, especially if you read, again, those first chapters of the Silmarillion, sort of up to chapter 10, where Feanor is consumed by hate for Morgoth. Morgoth is consumed by hate for everything and then still desires everything. It's really interesting to think about. But I've ranted too much. I need a cup of tea. I need some dinner. And we have indeed gone on for an hour. So, thank you all very much for coming. I really appreciate it. And I think the best thing for me to do to end this out is to stick on the music and let chat roll for a bit. Bye bye.
Beyond the mist and heather grey, where mortal footsteps seldom stray, there stands a hall of ancient stone, where secrets sleep and truth is known. The lost lore library, they say, guards wisdom from the light of day. Oh, Jack the keeper, wise and old, with silver tongue and heart of gold, he tends the books of days gone by beneath the ever-watchful sky, and knights in tarbards green and white protect the halls both day and night. The shelves stretch high to vaulted beams, where candlelight on leather gleams, and manuscripts in languages dead tell tales that common folk ne'er read. But Jack, he knows each volume well, and which are safe and which to quell. Oh, Jack the keeper, wise and old, with silver tongue and heart of gold, he tends the books of days gone by beneath the ever-watchful sky, and knights in tabards green and white protect